O Lord, say thank you, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. In Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen. We're going to continue with the book of Genesis, and we last time I think did chapter 33. Now we're going to 34. Now we ended up in 33 by Jacob settling at one place in the promised land, in the land of Canaan. And that place is called Shechem. Shechem is the name of the town or the city. When you talk about cities in those days, we're not talking about the same thing that we call city today. We're not talking about Raleigh or Charlotte or New York City. None of that stuff. Those cities didn't exist then. When you call what you call a city in those days will be like a group of houses with one street or one alley, maybe 10, 15 houses. That's the whole thing. Usually a group of people that are connected by marriage or by relationships, familiar relationships. They're closely related, cousins, uncles, aunts. So that's a city in those days. Just for us to understand, put things in perspective, Jerusalem in the time of David, Jerusalem, the city, the capital of Israel, was 11 acres. It's half the land we have here in Chapel Hill. It's really very interesting to think about the sizes of things at that time. Most of the land was a wilderness or a forest, something where wild animals have their habitat. There were much more wild animals then than now. People were afraid of lions and bears. So he lived next to that place that's called Shechem, mainly to kind of trade and buy and sell so that they would have their needs met. And then he sat next to the city. Usually cities had walls to surround them. We're not talking about fortification of a battle zone. No, we were talking about walls to kind of keep animals away in a way. And he, for the first time, purchased a piece of land, and they paid for it, 100 pieces of money of that time. And he built an altar. You notice here the patriarchs, wherever they go, they build an altar. That's their essential thing. Before they do anything, they have a place to worship. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I was reading St. John Chrysostom speaking in one of his commentaries to the owners of the states in Byzantium and in his time when he was a patriarch of Constantinople. He wrote that piece of work to the state owners, the rich noblemen who owned a huge piece of land and had farmers working and servants and big house and many farmer houses that they actually take care of. And he told them very frankly, he said, before you build yourself a stable for your horses, build a sheepfold for the sheep of Christ. Before you go and make sure that you have the best house and the best masonry and woodwork, go and find for your people, the people that lives in the state, a place to worship God. And he kept going on about it for like 2 pages. It was very beautiful. And he was very emphatic about the necessity of having a place of worship that people can gather and celebrate the Eucharist. So this is taken from the patriarchs in the Old, all the way to the New Testament, all the way today. And those pious people in the church will always seek to build a beautiful place. Might not be expensive, but it's just beautiful and it's inspiring to worship with icons and iconostasis, and it could be simple and not very expensive, but it has a taste, it has a spirit. We read the Synaxarium maybe a month ago about this man. His name was John. He's an elder man in the government of one of the Muslim caliphs in Egypt, and he was given the permission to build one church. He had much more money and resources, so he built two churches. When the Muslim, uh, 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 the ones that were very envious of him and his place in the governor's heart, kind of betrayed him to the governor, said he built two churches, you give him a permission for one. So the governor said, you cannot do that, you have to knock down one. He kept going back and forth from one building to another until he died. He's an old man. It was a summertime. He got dehydrated and got a heat stroke, and then he fell dead. They had to bury him under one of the churches, and the churches still exist. The governor said he had paid for the other church with his life. Leave it, and he was very sad because he was a good man, a good help for the governor. So they left the churches still exist, the Church of St. Barbara and the Church of Sergius, St. Sergius, and they still is erected, and they are very much, there are twin churches. You can go, and they're next door. They're very close to each other because the Christians at that time were plenty and they didn't fit into one church. So this was the end of last chapter, chapter 34, and I want you to pay attention. This chapter would have some topic that we need to talk about, and it could be relevant to today's stuff. Now, Dinah, that's the name of the only name of a girl in the children of Jacob. I'm sure there was other girls, but this one had a story to be told. And the book of Genesis does not hide anything, and the Bible does not hide anything. So Dinah, the daughter of Leah, Leah had 6 boys, and this girl was mentioned. Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. Dinah was one of the smallest children of Jacob. She came at the end. So she was maybe a preteen or a teen. Maybe she was 13, 14, 15. I would say not more than 15 years old. At 15, they would consider her ready to get married at that time. But why did she get out of her camp? She wanted to see her peers. She wanted some girls to play with. That's usually the trigger. When a teenager or a boy or a girl feels lonely because his parents don't really have time or don't have the heart to play with them in their interested games, and they feel very lonely. So she wanted to go out to get acquainted and to have friends. Unfortunately, usually that's the case. That's why kids today go on the internet and go on the media, and they pose themselves so they can be seen. Unfortunately, it's not a safe environment. In that time, it was seen by a man, Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite. And this person is a Canaanite. He's also maybe an older boy. He may be in his late teens or maybe at 20 years old. We don't know from the story. But he grown up in a very violent, I can say the least, it's not a very pious community. They don't have the fear of God. This boy did not grow in the way of the children of Jacob grew, even if they do wrong. That's the difference. I wanted everybody to know. Even if the children of Jacob will do wrong, they know it is wrong. But in that culture, in the Canaanite culture, there is nothing called wrong. They believed in a god. The god, his name is Baal, and the goddess is Ashtaroth. And the relationship between the god and the goddess is a very promiscuous, very vile, and perverted relationship. By this, they get the fertility of the land. So if the god and the goddess of the community are very promiscuous and sexual, and they worship them by sexual activity in their temples. They go to the temple of Baal and do sexual stuff to promote the fertility of the land. What do you think the mind of the young men in that country would be like? Very, very sexual and very corrupted. So he saw a new girl that's not one of his relatives, a kind of foreigner, and she's different. I'm sure she was very attractive because not only of her facial character, but because I think of her manners. She was a quiet girl, peaceful girl, but curious, very curious. He was the prince. And to handle the situation, he saw her and he got attracted. So he took her and laid with her, meaning he raped her and violated her. That's the way to talk about rape. So, but in the same time, which is very interesting, when we studied rape in medicine, they tell you the definition. I'm going to try to open that subject today. Definition of rape, I remember that the first year of residency, they said, rape is not a sex crime. It's actually a violence crime. It's violence, more than sexual perversion. But in this case, it appears that he has emotions for the girl. He loved her. His soul was attracted to her, but he didn't know how to handle his emotions. That is the perversion of being away from God. His soul was strongly attracted to Dinah. He, on a human level, was very much attracted and attached to her. And he loved the young woman and spoke kindly to the young woman. So he started with the violence. I'm not sure what Dinah thought of this. I'm going to try to understand that in a little bit. But this is the crazy schizophrenia of this culture. He has human feelings for her, but to handle the situation, he started by raping her. That's outrageous, and of course, it is very sad, and it's very heartbreaking, heart-wrenching. So Shechem spoke to his father, and his father's name is Hamor, saying, "Get me this young woman as a wife." He wants to marry the girl. Apparently, by coming closer to her, he saw even more attraction in this innocent little girl who had no she had no evil, as he is used to. Something new, something very attractive. As you see a beggar or a homeless person stumbling on a treasure or a precious gemstone somewhere in the streets. So Jacob heard the father. Now you can understand how would that make Jacob feel like, that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter. And the language of the Bible is very gentle, very soft, so defiled. Now his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob held his peace until they came. They came from the field. Then Hamor, before he speak to them, the father of Shechem went out to Jacob to speak with him also. And the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it, and the men were grieved, of course, and were very angry for a legitimate reason, because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by laying with Jacob's daughter, a thing which ought not to be done. And that's how they know. It's put in the Arabic, and I'm sure in the Hebrew in parentheses, means a thing which ought not to be done. Something is said commonly. This is not supposed to happen. That's unheard of. When this is the norm, actually, you say that in sociology. You say, how do you make society? By cultivating norms and laws. So this is almost a law and a norm, that you don't do that stuff. It's not something that is acceptable. It's outrageous, and it grieves and angers everyone in society. So the father of the boy spoke with him, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him as a wife." Here you have a language of a person who is used to that stuff. Like it's not like he's first saying, "We have made a grave thing and we're ready to take whatever." No, he's jumping into the son and what the son desires. Seems like he's not an evil man, but he is used to this thing. It's very clear that he has nothing to say for what happened. And he also wants to make it a business. So make marriages with us, give your daughters to us, and take our daughters to yourselves. Let's just cover this thing with relationships, and we become one family. So you shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade in it, and acquire possessions for yourselves in it. And then Shechem said to their father, now Shechem was there when the father was speaking, and her brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes." "Oh yeah? And whatever you say to me, I will give." He's trying to fix his mistake. But I will say something, some mistakes is almost impossible to fix. It's almost impossible. The people have to carry consequence of things like this the rest of their lives. It's only God who can heal and can restore. And at this point, I don't think it is. We're going to talk about what happens to Dinah more than what happens to her brothers. He said, "Do whatever you want. Ask me whatever you want. Ask me ever so much dowry and gift." He's thinking money. "And I will give according to what you say to me. But give me the young woman as a wife." But the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father and spoke deceitfully. Now here is the character of Jacob appearing in his children. They have inherited that from Jacob, at least a couple of them, at least. Because he had defiled Dinah, their sister. They couldn't overlook that. They couldn't go into any business. In their mind, in their heart, that's it. There has to be consequences, and they already have decided the consequences of the rape. And they said to them, look at the deceit here. "We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a reproach to us. It will be a humiliation. It will be a defilement. It will be a big disgrace to give our sister to someone who is not in a covenant with God. But on this condition, we will consent to you. We will agree. We don't want money. We don't want your gifts. Whatever you want to think about, keep it. It's not about that. It's very deceitful. They will take it. If you will become as we are, if every male of you is circumcised, every male, then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people." And they thought about this very quickly. They just came from the field, and the two sons that we're going to mention now made up their mind, and they made a plan. It was very quick. "But if you will not heed us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and be gone." Oh yeah? Where is she? Actually, at this point, she's still with Shechem. He kept her in his house. And their words pleased Hamor, the father, and Shechem, his son. So the young man did not delay to do the thing. He went immediately because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. He was more honorable than all the household of his father. Relatively speaking, and this boy was to keep his word, but he was very much overcome by his desire. When you say honorable here, means that man of his word, he would keep his word, and he would do it very quickly. So he went home and started cutting himself. And Hamor and Shechem, his son, came to the gate of their city and spoke with the men of their city, saying, "These men are at peace with us. Therefore, let them dwell in the land and trade in it. For indeed the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters to us as wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the men consent to dwell with us, to be one people, if every male among us is circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock, their property, and every animal of theirs be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will dwell with us. They're trying the father now very much. And it shows that the father is spoiling the son big time. So he wants his son to have the girl, and he will do anything. So he's trying to go out and convince their relatives, the dwellers of the city, all the men, to cut themselves and make circumcision for themselves. And he's trying to persuade them. And he's giving them reasons. He didn't say that. And Jacob didn't say that I'm going to give you my livestock. But he's saying if we become one family, their things will be our things, their property will be our property. But he didn't finish the other one, would say, and ours will be theirs. He's trying to entice. And he say, let's just do what they want us to do, and we'll have their wealth. It seems like he was an older man and respected man, and everyone in the city listened. And all who went out of the gate of his city heeded Hamor and Shechem his son. Every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. It's very sad. They all carried the consequence of this action. And it came to pass on the third day. Why the third day? In the first day, you got the clean cut. The second day, you get bacteria sitting in the wound. That's common in those days. There were no antiseptics. Nobody knows an antiseptic. They might put some wine on it. It would hurt like the dickens, but it's not going to be enough. And then the third day, and on the third day, and the infection reaches its top, and they get fever. And they become in pain and in fever and very weak to do anything. So it came to pass on the third day, when they were in pain, that two of the sons of Jacob, the one who had devised the plan, most probably, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers. Okay, let's just explain a little bit. There are 12 sons of Jacob. 6 belongs to Leah, and the girl with them, that's Dinah. 2 belongs to Rachel. 2 belongs to Zilpah, Leah's slave girl, and 2 belongs to Bilhah, Rachel's slave girl. So you have 3 sets of 2s, which is 6, and 6 by Leah, and Dinah is their sister. Who is the children of Leah? I know I can name 4 very quickly. Reuben, the first one. Simeon, that's the one that we see here. Levi, number 3. Number 4 is Judah. So Issachar, I think, is one of them, and Dan is one of them, I'm sure. There is going to be 6, and Dinah is the sister. So she's the full sister of Simeon and Levi. Simeon is number 2, Levi is number 3, and Dinah is the youngest girl. So the Simeon and Levi, her full brothers, each took his sword and came boldly upon the city. Now they know exactly when to come and strike, and killed all the males. And they killed Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword. And of course, they took their sister from Shechem's house. Apparently, at that moment, until that moment, she was staying in the house of Shechem and went out. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city, because their sister had been defiled. They took their sheep, their oxen, and their donkeys, what was in the city and what was in the field, and all their wealth, all their little ones, and their wives they took captive, and they plundered even all that was in the houses. Jacob knew this, and Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have troubled me by making me obnoxious among the inhabitants of the land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and since I am few in number, they will gather themselves together against me and kill me. I shall be destroyed, my household and I." But they said, "Should he treat our sister like a harlot?" Anyway, so this is a violence answered by violence. Jacob was not of the same plan. When he's going to bless, he's not going to bless Simeon and Levi. That is evil with evil. That is very wrong. And Jacob is not going to bless his two sons. Actually, why Judah became the tribe of the king? Because Reuben had done something wrong. And then Simeon and Levi, Jacob will never forget what they had done to the people of Shechem. Yes, they violated their sister. They violated Jacob's daughter, and he would be feeling it more than anybody else. But this is not the way Jacob will answer. Jacob would have maybe took his family and left. I don't think it was the plan of God that they mix the two races and they would be dissolved in the Canaanite like Esau. He had learned that. Esau had been dragged into the culture of Canaan through the marriage with the Canaanite girls. So I don't think Jacob would have agreed to intermarry through the Canaanites. I want to just leave that aside because it's all wrong. It's all messy. It's all humans at their lowest. The rape and the revenge, both of them. But let us talk about Dinah. What do you think Dinah felt? What does any youngster or a young aged person, when they are sexually molested or exploited or raped, feel? I think the first thing they feel is shame. I must be very dirty. I must be very dirty that I had to suffer this. They lose completely respect for themselves. It's very tough. And this is one of the toughest problems that faces the counselors and the advisors and the people around the person. To reinstate their preciousness, that they are a precious person. When it happens in young age, it's close to impossible. It's very close to impossible to restore that confidence in the validity of the person. What's the second thing? They blame themselves. They have guilt. What's the guilt? I had done something to make that person do this to me, especially in a young age. If they're old, if this rape happens to a 30-year-old or 25 years old, maybe they will not suffer that guilt, but it will be suffered in the young age. Even older people actually have that guilt. When you talk to people who had suffered rape or sexual molestation at young age, you would see it. It's impossible. You look in their eyes, and the eyes tell you, even their eyes will tell you that I'm worthless. And many, maybe and not maybe, most probably, actually, this is in their mind is a fact. I am the reason behind the other person doing this to me. I must have done something, or there's something about me that's very provoking. And I will tell you something more. In Egypt, when things like this happened, a father or a mother would blame the girl. If she speaks to her mother, she would start beating her up and say, "Don't say this to anybody. You did something. The way you talk or the way you walk or whatever." And it aggravates the problem with ignorance. It is a big hurt, and it still goes on, especially in the uneducated places. This leads me to talk about rape. I need to speak about this, especially with something happened recently in the church, and I'm sure it's like they say, it's gone viral on the media. We need to approach that and see how can we deal with this on different aspects. One of them is I'm talking today. Rape is a crime, and if you ask the scholars who study, the rape from the sociology point of view or from psychology, they will tell you statistics say the biggest portion of rape happens from people that they are close connection, close contact on regular basis with the victims. It's very sad, but that's the reality. It happens from unfortunately, sometimes parents, sometimes an older brother, an uncle, a grandfather, a teacher, and in the last case, we have it from someone who is a priest. And if it's with a younger person or a person in a place of submission, they look to the other person, to the teacher or to the servant or the uncle as an authority. And that makes it very difficult for them to speak about it. They don't talk about it because it carries um, this image of authority. That person could not be wrong, could not be wrong. So they always blame themselves. The criminal rape that happens within the circle of acquaintance is always underreported. What is more reported is the criminal that happens, the crimes that happens from a foreigner, a stranger, like in a park or in a dark place, in an alley. So this is number one. Most rape happen from acquaintances. In college age, they call it friend rape. When they go out and get drunk, and this is what I tell all young people, don't acquire that habit of going out and getting drunk with friends. Most rape happen in that age by a friend after drinking. Sometimes the friend is not a violent person, but when they get under the influence of alcohol and you release inhibition, anything can happen. And the problem is, in those cases, people don't want to feel lonely. Like Dinah, like I said, she doesn't want to feel lonely. She doesn't feel like she's understood by her family or her parents or the people that's close to her or her priest or whatever. So they're very busy. Everybody's busy with the serious work of life every day. Someone like Jacob, who should be the father of Dinah, who takes care of her, is an older man who has a lot of business needs to do with. And he's very much distracted by Joseph and his attraction to Joseph. So he's almost, we don't want to say that, but it seems like he's ignoring the other kids. For Dinah to have enough time to go out and that exposure. So parents, especially, and I say this from time to time, I take advantage of one gospel reading that happens maybe twice a year, where Jesus tells of the stumbling of young one. He says, whoever stumble one of those little ones, it is better for him to tie a millstone. Millstone is a huge stone. You cannot carry it by yourself, to his neck and throw himself in the river, meaning to drown himself and commit suicide, than to do one of these offenses, and especially at young age, because it destroys the person. If it's a girl, she's forever lost her dignity. And whenever she thinks of herself, she doesn't think that good. And she would never believe anyone who tells her that God loves you and God cares for you, and he sent his son to die for you. She's going to say, I don't deserve it. I'm not worthy. Not in a good way, not in a humble way, but in a destructive way. If it's a boy, his manhood as a man and dignity is completely gone, will not be able to recover it. And with the best therapy and the best attention, spiritual, and the tears, it will be always there as a scar and a wound. So I say this, and I take advantage about not parents not to leave your kids. Never leave your kid with even the closest relative. Don't leave sight, don't let go of your kids at any point. Not in a park, not at home when you invite your families to live and relatives to spend time with you. Don't, of course, never to leave them in one room. In the church, I try all my best, and I would say this to all the priests, to stay and take confessions and counseling in the main hall. If there is an office, they should keep a glass window uncovered all time. And we did this in medicine too. I am a doctor, a male physician who's going to examine a female patient. The rule is to take a nurse with you. Don't leave that open. It's from all aspects not wise. So what does, I want to take that from the law point of view and from the sociology point of view. From the law point of view, definition of rape in the United States. Rape, as spelled by the law, it is what they call sexual penetration. And I'm not going to detail that, but it's a penetration. When there is penetration, that's considered rape. If there is no penetration, it's considered molestation or assault. Different states will give different punishment for that, and depending on where the state is. Now, if someone had been charged with sexual assault or rape, they will go into a list, a registry, and they will have to notify their neighborhood wherever they go, especially child molestation, especially that. They will have to be labeled. And the people had to know that they are actually living in their neighborhood. They can say, no, we don't want them to live here. And it's really now more and more people are aware of the severity of the damage that happens from this, and they needed to protect their kids. From the point of view of sociology, something that I needed to speak about is the female place in society. That's important to talk about. It seems in those days, in the days of Jacob, the protection of the women and the female rights was completely on the shoulder of her brothers and father. They needed to take care of that. And what her brothers did is in their mind was the legitimate justice in their mind to be done. But since, let me just give you a little history. Now, if you study sociology, you know that in the 1940s, during the World War II, men went to war, especially from this country. I'm talking about America. I'm not talking about any other place. Men went to war. Some of them never came back. Some of them were killed. And women had to go out and work to fend for their families. And women started to work outside the home. By 1960, at the beginning of that decade, the 60s, they say at least maybe 17, 18% of women were working women. And at that time, the men in society looked at women as kind of breaking out of their normal or formal place in the house. And they are actually becoming more and more like men. And some voices and some men in the traditional way started to protest. So in the 1960s, you have the first feminist movement to defend the women's rights and equality with men as a reaction to the men who, or the society, and sometimes women too, who kind of criticized women for going out and working and seeking professional advancement side to side to men. I remember when I was in medical in the interview for medical residency. I remember the interviewer was the chief assistant who was a woman. And she asked me, she gave me a riddle and she wanted me to answer the riddle. And she told me this, okay, there was a man and his son in a car accident, and the man died on the spot. The son was severely wounded by the car accident, and he was taken to the hospital. In the emergency room, they called the surgeon, and the surgeon, when the surgeon came, looked at the boy, and the surgeon said, I can't operate on him. He is my son. Okay, how do you solve that riddle? I have to confess, I couldn't solve it. And then right there, the chief assistant said, now you see how you are prejudiced. because you thought of a surgeon as a male. That surgeon was his mother. So when she looked at the son, she said, I cannot, ethically, I cannot operate on him. He's my son. So, but you assuming the surgeons are always males, you kind of completely missed that his mother could be the surgeon. So she wanted to point out that in our work coming from the Middle East, we have certain presumptions and prejudices, and we should kind of give up those. And I agreed. This is true. I agreed. I think sometimes, and the feminist was to establish dignity for women in the workplace, because they say that the violence against women started to be even more in that decade because of the women going out considered to be actually in the 60s. That's what in America the studies showed, that men thought of women going outside to work as loose women, quote unquote loose. That was very harsh. And then the feminist movement has the right to kind of respond, and showed some good points and made in the defense of women going out. Women didn't go out to be loose or to be immoral. They went out because there was a need, and they wanted to have their place in society equal to men, and the equality is there. But there is certain things that now the feminist movement sometimes goes a little bit further and wants to cancel. And this is where we have a problem, actually, to cancel the differences, which is clearly not something that I guess even most women would agree with. This is not natural. We have men and women. To cancel it completely is against nature and against the creation that God had made. One of the problems they get across is the Bible. They say the Bible makes very big distinction between men and women. Of course, there is a distinction between men and women. And I would say this to all the women. I think I, as a man, I cannot have a child and I cannot give birth. I don't want to go into that debate, but there is some good in the feminist movement. They achieved some kind of protection for women, because to go out and work is not loose. To be a working woman is not something shameful or demeans a woman. Actually, in fact, this is what humans should do. If you go back to the Proverbs, chapter 31, in the description of a precious wife whose price is more precious than rubies, is half of it is actually work. Half of it is how she actually brings money. And that is right there in the heart of the Bible, talking about a precious woman. Now we'll go back to the issue of rape. Now there are actually hot centers for rape and for crisis management when rape happens. I think one of the things we need to do, and before I go into the talk about this priest that had been defrocked recently, the right thing to do is, as mothers and fathers, as servants in Sunday school, is to make a point to point out the risk and not to be ashamed. If Dinah was warned carefully by her mother or father, and I think there will be no, I think this thing would have never happened. I remember when I was a child, my grandmother, as a boy, she gave me a lot of warnings. Me and my sister and my brother, she would sit us down and say things that would be very shameful to hear, but it needed to be heard. Say, nobody touches your members, nobody puts his hand on your rear end, nobody, give you a kiss or give you a hug that is not a foreigner or somebody, that nobody talks to you and you go with them, a stranger, and don't go away alone by yourself in a place that you don't know, etc., etc., etc. These things had to be done, had to be said by a family member. And if a family member doesn't do it, the priest have to do it. If the priest in the family doesn't have to do it, cannot do it, the Sunday school teacher do it. But our kids and our females have to be protected by all means. It is outrageous that in this current age that we have things like this going on. It's really bad. And warn your parents not to leave their kids without attendance, even with the closest family members. Do not Do not trust yourself or your father or your uncle or your brother with your little ones. There's lots of horrible stories, and I've heard plenty of them to be aware in medicine and in the church that humans are humans. They have the weakness. It's not taken away from them by being a priest or a doctor or a psychologist. It doesn't prevent them from doing what evil can entice them to do. Enough said about this. I come to the problem of the church that needs to be addressed at this point, and I don't have much more information than you have. I just will share with you a few things. First, apparently, this priest who came to the States had a history. I just want to point one thing. When he came, um, it was maybe before the change of papacy. The change of papacy. So the church, I don't know where he was serving, and I had an idea he was in Virginia or somewhere like that. I didn't dig into the details of it, but I know for sure there is a letter that I have that Pope Taudrus took the papacy in November 2012, November 2012. And, when you have the papacy in our church, we don't have a stable court, we can say that. It was always a commission by the synod. When the synod meets, they have to have a commission to examine things. And the commission would make a recommendation about a certain priest or a bishop to the Pope, and the Pope would execute it. So there is a letter, I think it was on the Facebook, and I didn't get it from a special source or anything. A letter from Pope Taudrus, I'll share with you, in 2014. 2014. And in that letter, Pope Tawadros says, and here it is. I can translate it for you. A papal decree. According to what came to our attention from complaints and remarks regarding the hegumen, his name is Ruwais Aziz, and he is the priest in St. George, Hamilton, Virginia. So he's in Virginia. By the way, Virginia didn't have a bishop at the time. It belonged to the archdiocese, which belongs to the Pope directly. And he is sent there from Minya, Abor As in Egypt. And he's currently in the United States. After making the investigation and the interrogation and confronting him, it was proven true. Those allegations was confirmed. He was asked to stop practicing any priestly work since 2013 orally. The Pope met with him, I think, and the middle of 2013, which is like 6 months after the Pope had taken the place, he had taken the place of a Pope. He had orally told him to stop working as a priest, and he had to come immediately to Egypt. And he has no right to have any priestly service in the church, the Orthodox Church, the Coptic Orthodox Church in America or any other foreign country. So he's going to turn him back to his bishop to continue the investigation and limit his work in Egypt. I don't know the details of it, but that's what is written. It's written there in a very clear way that he had been told orally that he has no right to serve. And then that decision was made written. And the date of it is February 26, 2014. So that's stamped by and signed by the Pope. So this is done then. And then recently, after the big dilemma that happened, I don't know if he continued working against the popes decision, or the person didn't feel like they took enough action against him. There was in July 18th, 2020, this is this month, and um, his bishop in Minya, Abba Macarius, had decided to defrock him, to completely take off his priestly uh, uh, rank and turn him back into an ordinary person who cannot deal with people as a priest. After this is a decision after looking into the complaints coming to the diocese from some of the congregations of Saint George in Abu Oras, and this is before he went to America, and then also from the United States of America and even Canada. And we looked into the documents in the binder that is belonging to him, and what have been on the social media. And after the interrogation and investigation of the clerical council, and after listening to many of the person that had been hurt by this, we decided to defrock Higoman Ruwais Aziz from his priestly rank and going back to his uh, um, what we call it, the lay name, Yusuf Aziz Khalil. And by this, his relationship with priesthood and the service in the church has been cut uh, permanently. It's signed by the bishop in Minya and his secretary, and stamped by the stamp of the. It might be delayed. It should have been maybe done earlier. And to know the details of it and the fact that he uh, had gone on doing this, I think these I don't have information about, but at least we know the church had taken action, and maybe this will be the beginning of taking action more quicker and speedier. But definitely we have a job that is much more important that I like to spend more time. When I was in medicine, I like to spend my time in prevention. It's better than go back and try to treat. Prevention is by uh, educating people. And that's why they said in the sociology, they say the best way to prevent rape is to educate men and women, to educate the men that they have, the women are equal to them. They're not some object of sexuality or desire and cannot be violated because they are weaker. Now, this leads me to say one last thing. I wish that the feminist movement and our ladies who are very much for the church and for, of course, I don't doubt they love the church and love God. They have a task to do. I think one of the biggest problems of our time that demean females, I don't believe it's the church or a sick person in the church. I believe it is the porno industry. I mean, pornography says a statement that women, the regular, of course, I'm talking about normal pornography. I'm not talking about homosexual pornography. I'm talking about the regular pornography that millions of people watch every day. What does the statement say of that pornography give us? That women, our own blessed, saintly mothers, sisters, and daughters, are object of sexuality. They are not a human being. There's something to be used. So before I go and attack the church and make the church the subject of my anger, go and look at that and see what we can do as people. That the porno sites are open to every boy since he is like an 8 years old or even less, and getting them used to see how women should be treated. Would not that create a conflict in the mind of a young man about how he should look at his own family members? I need this to the conscious. I need to leave this to the conscious of everybody. to look at, and where should we actually direct our resistance before I go to the church. Yes, we don't have female priests. We don't have, we used to have female deacons, but we don't have female priests and bishops because Jesus didn't choose female priests and deacons. He had his mother. She's the holiest of the bunch. St. Mary was the holiest person in the church and still is. She's much more higher than the cherubim and the seraphim and the archangels and the patriarchs. I mean, if I ask anybody in a simple child and tell them who's holier, who's closer to God, St. Mary or Pope Tewodros, of course he would say, without doubt, St. Mary. So he didn't. He didn't pick St. Mary to become a patriarch. It is just in our fight and enthusiasm to break the inequality, which nobody who is a religious and conscious person should deny. We want to diffuse the roles, to become a father and a mother at the same time. It's just not the way Jesus wanted it. If he did it, I would do it. I don't really hesitate to do anything. So please, let us focus on our work and our energy, that we fight the good fight, the true fight, and be righteous, and not to be causing turmoil that is not going to lead anywhere. I've heard the voices of anger from anywhere, and that's why I wanted to bring this subject up. Of course, we as a church, and I personally, feel very appalled and hurt by the action of people taking advantage of weak child or weak female at any place. We're all sinners, but there are certain things that I personally think it's very appalling and very difficult to think about, is to take advantage of someone in a place of weakness. If I have the power to take advantage of that, that's something that I think I cannot live with. But I hope that everybody who is conscious and loves Christ and seek forgiveness and seek healing, and go to seek healing boldly and not to hide their wounds before it is too late. It is too late. And the hurt that's done cannot be undone. Let's say our Father. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, make us worthy, O Lord, to say, thank thee, our Father, who art in heaven. Hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. In Christ Jesus our Lord, for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory now and forever. Amen. May the love of God the Father and grace of his only begotten Son, Jesus Christ, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you, even in peace. Peace be with you.